All right, everybody, welcome. This is the more intimate breakout session. That we have the Office of the DC Long-Term Care Ombudsman. And today we have some representatives from that office. I've been told that they're known as the Mod Squad, which includes Mark Miller, who is the Ombudsman, Purley Jones, who is the Program Manager, and Holly Eaton, who is the Senior Attorney. Do we have the sign-in sheets?
Yes.
Yes. If you are looking to get your credit hours, there is a sign-in sheet. Where can they find the sign-in sheet? In the back? In the back. Way in the back. So don't forget to put your name down on the sign-up sheet. And then also, I've been told you want to make sure you use the right email. You want to keep your email consistent. So that's how they send you the information from that. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? Alrighty. I will turn it over to the Mod Squad.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I wanted to say thank you to Superior Court for inviting us today. I'm Mark Miller, the DC Long-Term Care Ombudsman, and this afternoon I'm just going to give you a really brief overview of the Ombudsman program. Purley Jones, our program manager, is going to get into some of the ethics that we encounter when dealing with capacity and guardianship, and then Holly Eaton, who's our staff attorney with the program, is going to get into the kind of, what are some of the alternatives that might be available to guardianship. So I'm going to go through this somewhat quickly. But why is it saying the Stevens Amendment? Oh, this is an ACL requirement. Okay, you can take a moment to read that. I'm not going to read it. It's the general sort of thing. So our mission's pretty simple. The Ombudsman program is available as a resource and advocate for people that are receiving long-term care services here in the district, either in a nursing home, assisted living, or if they're receiving in-home services under the EPD Medicaid waiver, which is Elderly Persons with Disabilities Medicaid waiver, with the goal of enhancing their quality of life and their quality of care. So pretty straightforward mission. A couple things I wanted to make you aware of with the program. We're authorized under the Federal Older Americans Act, specifically under Title VII. It requires that every state has a long-term care ombudsman program. They may be organized and operated slightly differently, but every state must have one. We have access to all long-term care facilities within the district without interference, which means we can go in 24/7. We are exempt from the HIPAA privacy statute. We're designated by Department of Health and Human Services as a health oversight agency. This comes in helpful sometimes when, for instance, if we had a guardian, and we do take complaints specifically against guardians, and let's say the guardian wasn't going to give us access to the resident's record for some reason, this would allow us to do this. It also allows us to access records from a resident if they can't give us permission, and there is no legal representative at that point. So it does allow us the freedom to do that. So, and we're not mandated reporters of abuse. If you listen to the couple of the other sessions this morning, and they were talking about the importance of reporting abuse, because as we all know, not all abuse gets reported, actually a very small percentage. However, we're not mandated reporters, and that's important simply because a lot of times we have to develop a trust and confidential relationship with the resident. And so they have to be able to trust us in that if they tell us horrible things, but then say, I don't want you to do anything about it, we're not going to move forward with a complaint investigation or report that. There's a great fear of retaliation amongst many residents, and so that's why we're exempt from reporting. A lot of what we do, I love this slide, is empowerment. It's the sort of thing where it's amazing what people can do for themselves in terms of self-advocacy if they just have information about what their rights are, if they have information about who do I go to if I do have a complaint within the facility, and we provide that sort of level of information and support. So hopefully that they can self-advocate. So empowerment becomes a huge part of what we do. A couple things really quickly about the program. Our primary responsibility under the Older Americans Act is to receive, identify, and investigate complaints with the hope of getting a resolution. We do provide a lot of information to people that call and they want to know how to navigate the long-term care system. They want to know what facilities are available. They want to know what their rights are. We're providing that information to them, and also technical support to facilities, because sometimes facilities will call us and they'll say, we've got this situation. Can you step in and help? Here in the district, we advocate for systemic change. We'll look at patterns of complaints, and so we'll go to DC Council. We'll try to address systemic change, the facility level, the city level, and also the federal level. And at the federal level right now, we're looking at a lot of the workforce issues and minimum staffing standards and that sort of thing. So we do work. The other thing I want to mention, we do have a core of 25 currently volunteers. If anybody's interested in volunteering, please contact us. Those are really our eyes and ears in facilities. We can't be everywhere, but we want to be in as many places as possible to provide a regular presence so that residents get to know us and feel comfortable coming up to us to address problems. This is kind of the tent that we've got. We've got 17 nursing homes and currently 15 assisted living facilities in the district. There are some smaller mental health group homes. There's about 80 of those currently. And then the elderly and persons with disability waiver clients it's over 5,000. I think the last count was about 5,700. So that represents kind of all our jurisdiction in terms of people that we would serve in the program. Just a couple quick things. By the numbers here, last year we investigated almost 300 complaints. Have one of the highest resolution rates in the country at 86%. So if we're going to investigate and we're going to try to help you, we're going to see that complaint through to the end, and we're pretty successful at that. And you see that we've handled more than 800 requests for information, and we also do that. Providers, we're very involved in resident councils, and we're trying to start some family councils. And the importance of this is there's safety in numbers, and oftentimes because we attend resident council meetings with the council's permission, that's where you really identify some of the trends and things that are really going on in facilities. So that's been very useful for us. And just a note that the majority of the people that we're serving are going to be low income. They're either Medicaid recipients or dual eligible. You're probably wondering, well, what are some of the frequent complaints? Response to requests for assistance. This is the age-old call bell. I ring the call bell, go to the bathroom, and it takes 20 or 40 minutes for someone to get there. Staffing. This now has become a huge issue for everybody, I think, across the healthcare spectrum, finding the staff to do the work. And so we're starting to pick up more staffing complaints. Managed care complaints have increased. And autonomy rights and preferences. This would be like discharge issues. Somebody's being involuntarily discharged. We will come in and help them, and we will help them file their appeal. So those are some of the most frequent issues. A couple trends real quick. Increasingly diverse resident population. It's not what it was 10, 15 years ago. It is a microcosm of the larger community. It's no longer, nursing homes used to be, you could really demographically, 82-year-old white women. And now it's everybody. Growing demand for affordable assisted living. Now DC has done a good job with this to increase the amount so that you don't have to go right from home to a nursing home. It gives kind of an in-between point. Workforce issues I've already mentioned. And then the lack of capacity here in the district to meet demand. And this is critical. We have more than 500 district residents, Medicaid recipients, that are living in Maryland nursing homes because we just do not have the capacity. Adding on assisted living will help a little bit with that, but it's just we're out of space. There's no more beds available in the district. So I think I'm going to skip this slide. A couple of our priorities. We've really attempted to do some outreach to underserved populations, including the LGBTQ community, developing nursing home family councils so that they've got a say in things and they can bring their voice to the table when there's problems. passage of the Electronic Monitoring and Resident Protection Act. This was to allow residents or families to put cameras in rooms. This is already the case in, I think, 39 states. We're looking to do it here in the district, at least with nursing homes initially. I think that's very important. And then addressing some of these health equity gaps in terms of the available of affordable assisted living. We really need to expand that some more. So I think that was everything I was going to cover. And if you're interested more in the program, down at our table, the legal counsel for the elderly table, there's some brochures down there if you want to pick that up. So I'm going to turn it over to Purley. I did that in less than 10 minutes.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we think about our work. Mark kind of gave you an overview, high-level overview, but I'll talk a little bit about how we go about thinking about what we do. We advocate for residents who are in long-term care settings or receiving long-term care services and supports. And I always like to say that people don't, go into nursing homes, for example, because they have, chronic health conditions. They go because they can't manage those conditions. And so we like to make sure that we're advocating for individuals on an individual person-centered level. And one of the things that we do think about constantly when we're talking about people who have diminished or limited capacity is, where are we in that spectrum? Okay. And so our mindset is grounded in a set of ethics that focuses on autonomy, least restrictive intervention, and then protection from harm. So you can kind of keep that in mind as we go along. Autonomy is kind of at the top of the tier, autonomy and dignity, and then least restrictive intervention. And then we have to make sure that folks are protected. For the long-term care ombudsman, we're primarily concerned about the quality of life and the quality of care that residents are receiving, either in their homes or in the long-term care facilities. So we do have a set of guiding principles. The first would be autonomy, right at the top. Is the individual able to make decisions for themselves? Are they able to make those decisions without being coerced or pressured or manipulated in any kind of way? And our role is to try to preserve that autonomy at all costs. So some people don't necessarily agree with us, but if we're having a meeting, the resident's voice needs to be present in that meeting, okay, or there's no meeting. Okay, least restrictive alternative. Okay, if you think of this, broad spectrum, on one end you have independence and autonomy, and then on the other end you have guardianship. Okay, and so when you think about least restrictive alternative, guardianship is at the far end where all the rights are taken away. All right, informed consent, somewhere in between there. I think all of us would agree that if you're going to make a good decision, you need to have all the information you need to make a good decision. So was the individual informed that you have all the right information present when that decision was being made? And then, of course, protection from harm. We know that power of attorneys, for example, can be misused. Okay. We know that power of attorneys are not monitored in the same way a guardianship is. Okay. It's monitored by the court. Power of attorneys is wide open. Okay. And so we have to be concerned that the interests of the resident is being met. Okay. One. All right. So, power of attorneys versus guardianship. Is the power of attorney effective? Is it enough? Is it too much? Okay. So one thing we do know is that a power of attorney is durable and specific, but is the one that's in place specific? Is it specific enough to address the individual's need at this particular time? So you have the financial, you have your healthcare decision. Perhaps there's one drafted that encompasses both, and maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe that's too much. So we have to consider those factors. Was it signed with full mental capacity? Okay, if it was just done yesterday, and it's clear that there's some real capacity issues, that might not be appropriate. Okay. And did the individual understand what they were doing when they signed that document? Okay. And then we have to consider whether or not the agent is trustworthy or acting responsibly. Okay. Particularly in the case of financial power of attorneys, there's always that opportunity for exploitation. Okay. There's also signs like the bills are not getting paid. Okay. And then, is there oversight or accountability in place? Again, the power of attorney, is sort of free floating out there. There's no one to really oversee that or monitor that. And so, how would you go about really assuring both transparency but also accountability in situations like that? Okay. All right. So the role of the ombudsman in this case would be to investigate signs of misuse and to advocate for transparency. And I mentioned before, about those care plan meetings or doctor's appointments. I'm going to get this right before I leave today. Okay. So you want to we want to make sure that there is transparency in play here. Okay. There's a number of ways to do that. We do have family members that are involved. Sometimes family members don't always agree. Sometimes a family member may have power of attorney that everybody else is questioning why this family member came into town and all of a sudden they have power of attorney. But you do have family members who raise questions like that. You have care teams. In some of these care team meetings, you have multiple disciplines in those care team meetings. And so everybody has a perspective on the individual we're trying to serve. All right. And so here, the question is raised when guardianship may be necessary. Okay, so some clear indicators for us. There's no valid power of attorney and the individual is incapacitated. Okay, so that may be a sign there. The power of attorney is vague, invalid, or misused. Sometimes they're outdated. And sometimes there's maybe 2 or 3 power of attorneys floating out there. Safety or financial stability is at risk. Okay. So if someone is, going to the bank, every other day, with the power of attorney, maybe you want to raise some concerns about something like that. Judgment. Okay. Weighing risk versus rights. Risk versus rights. Very delicate measure there. The resident has a right to independence, self-determination, to be involved in their care. Okay. Risk. Wandering outside of the facility in the street, or You may consider not taking medication as a risk. Maybe, maybe not. You have a right to refuse treatment. Okay? Recommend or when absolutely necessary. Recommend only when absolutely necessary. This is guardianship. We advocate for autonomy, independence. We're not likely to be the ones to stroll into court and petition for guardianship. All of our facilities are responsible for the care. Again, remember that the reason people go into care settings is because they can't manage their care. So the facility administrator is responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. We'll take care of the rights. Okay? And so if there are really dire concerns, then they have resources where they can petition. Okay? And you can go through the proper channels to determine if the individual lacks capacity and at what level of assistance they might need. Okay? Got it. Okay, so for us, here's one framework. There's other frameworks out there. So, step one would be to assess capacity. Can the individual make decisions? Okay, number of ways of thinking about that. Review the power of attorney. The Ombudsman has access to records, so we can always, investigate to determine if the facility has these documents on file, and we take a look at those. Evaluate the agent. Is the agent acting in good faith? Okay. Monitor outcomes. So if you have an instrument and it is specific about what those responsibilities are, then we need to take a look back to see if they are being implemented appropriately. And then consider the alternatives. Is guardianship the only option? Are there other measures that can be put in place short of guardianship? So we want to take a look at that. We often operate in interdisciplinary environments, so we're looking to get feedback from everybody in those environments, not just inside the facility, but it could be a hospital setting. And if we can, and we have to, we'll pull those doctors in and have them weigh in on critical decisions. All right. So just to kind of sum it up, we empower through advocacy, okay? And we look for well-executed powers of attorney, and with every effort to preserve that independence, and then scrutiny of those documents ensure safety and dignity. And then again, the Ombudsman always advocates for the least restrictive and the most ethical path. Okay, thank you.